The tool that congregations use to share a snapshot of their ministry with potential candidates is called the Ministry Site Profile. We say that it's a snapshot because it's a starting point for further conversation. We can never contain the entire story of a congregation's witness in a single document, but we can provide an outline of that witness that can inspire further conversation with pastors and deacons. To create a ministry site profile, open a web browser and find www.elca.org/call. This is the ELCA's webpage for call process resources. Scroll down and click the second button, Ministry Sites. This is the page you will use to create and access your ministry site profile. Click the Ministry Site Profile button to log in or create an account. Be sure to share this login information with other members of your committee and your congregation's office for redundancy. Note, too, that the email address you use will receive notifications about your profile status. Use a password that can be shared and isn't used for any of your personal accounts. This is the account profile page for the ministry site profile. Begin by adding basic information for your congregation. Check with your congregation's office to find out your ID number or contact your office of the bishop. Also, double-check the name of the synod that you indicate below. Some synods have very similar names. If you select the wrong synod, your site profile may inadvertently be lost. After clicking Next, you'll be brought to the MSP status page, which lists your most recent edit, the status of your reference's confidential recommendation, and whether your ministry site profile has been reviewed and approved by the office of the bishop. Below, you can manage your MSP. There are 5 options. Review/print this ministry site profile allows you to create a PDF of your most recent updates. Edit this ministry site profile allows you to complete fields and edit text. Request a reference's confidential recommendation invites someone familiar with your context to complete a short form describing your ministry. You will need a name and an email address to complete this request. Edit Your 7 Reflections form provides an opportunity to supplement your MSP with additional reflections about your congregation's ministries. Archive Hide My MSP from Search will deactivate your MSP. Keep your cursor away from this link until your new pastor begins their first day. Click Edit this ministry site profile to see the rest of the form.
We will now walk you through the process of filling out the ministry site profile. The MSP is divided into 5 parts, each focusing on a different area of information. There's a lot of ground to cover in the MSP, but by tackling one part at a time, you'll soon be able to give an in-depth overview of what makes your congregation or parish's ministry unique. Part 1 of the MSP begins with the basic location and leadership information of the congregation, as well as an overview of the surrounding context in which your ministry site is located. Begin by completing the contact information for your ministry site, the congregation president or organization head, and the chairperson of the call or search committee. Fill in as much information as is available to make communication as easy as possible throughout the call process. Next, you'll be asked to record demographic information for both your congregation and the surrounding community. You can find a lot of this information by visiting www.census.gov. Note that the drop-down menu provides 5% increments, so exact numbers aren't necessary. You will likely find that the demographics of language and race ethnicity will vary between the congregation and the surrounding community. If you have any other background information to include, you may type it in the additional information box as well. Next, list your congregation's gender comparison and age distribution. If your congregation's database can't provide these numbers for you, consider printing a list of birthdays and doing the count yourself. Indicate the number of paid staff in your congregation next. Volunteers are not included in this count. Other lay professionals include organists, choir directors, Christian education directors, paid youth group leaders, and other positions that aren't captured by the other staff categories. You will then be asked to indicate your average weekly worship attendance, selected from a list of ranges. Average attendance in Christian education for all ages across the span of a week, and the parish type. You will also be asked to provide the percentage of people who reside at given distances from the church facilities. There are many ways to do this. One way is to place a map of the area surrounding your congregation on a wall with concentric circles drawn at half-mile, a mile, and 3-mile radius. Ask people to place pins where they live and then count the pins in each circle. Calculate percentages by comparing pins in each ring with the number of total pins. The next question asks about the community type. These are search terms that pastors and deacons can use to find your congregation. Check as many of these types as apply to your setting. There's no need to overthink these types. Pick the ones that resonate most with how you describe your community yourself. You'll be able to provide better information and context of the area of your ministry site profile. In the final section of Part 1 of the MSP, provide the budget information for the last fiscal year, including the total budget, total debt, total mission support, and total savings, reserves, and endowments. It's important that this information is accurate and complete for transparency throughout the call process. Typically, this information is available in your congregation's annual report, or it can be provided easily by your congregation's treasurer.
Part 2 of the MSP provides a snapshot of your congregation's ministry, both in the surrounding community and inside of the church facilities. So you'll not want to use this space to articulate the way that you've partnered with a pastor or a deacon in the past or hope to in the future. Instead, you'll want to focus on the ways members of your congregation live out your faith in the present. Characteristics describe your community, broadly speaking. So think of it as an introductory paragraph from a Wikipedia article. Basic facts about the population, socioeconomics, and other notable information. This would be a great place to include colorful information about your community as well. Festivals, fairs, and quirks. Context, this section describes the change in your community at large, not in your congregation. So perhaps there's been a change in population, business, or industries. What new things have started happening in your community? What things have ended? What is on hold? Trends describes changes specific to your congregation. Has your congregation experienced a change in attendance or resources or in the way that people participate? Programs is the place where you're invited to include all the things that happen as an expression of ministry and mission. This is the Bible study, Sunday school, confirmation, quilt groups, choirs, missions, near and far, participation in the life of the community. If it's an expression of your congregation's mission and ministry, you'd include it right there. Goals are what you hope to achieve in mission and ministry, regardless of who your next pastor happens to be. You may be tempted to write, "Find a pastor" in this space. Anyone reading this form already knows that. So, what else does your congregation strive toward? A note here about strategic plans. If you have one, this is a place to offer a summary. If you don't have one, don't rush to make one up. A strategic plan is a tool that some congregations use to organize their goals, but does not indicate anything greater or lesser about the quality of your congregation's ministry. Energy asks about the excitement of your congregation right now. This is an opportunity to be honest about your energy levels as a congregation. So if you're excited and on fire, share that here. If you are tired or weary, that's okay too. You may remember that Jesus accompanies weary people in need of healing. So whatever your energy level, provide an honest assessment here so that God can draw you and a new servant leader together for God's good. Partnership. How do you see yourselves as an active participant in the ELCA and in the Synod? What things do you do that are a reflection of that relationship? How do you participate in Synod or church-wide assemblies? How do you participate in ELCA worldwide ministries? How do members of your congregation serve on commissions or committees? How do your resources support the church universal? You would include that here. To what extent is the congregation involved in synod activities and partnerships? How do you understand your congregational identity as a member of the ELCA? Why are you part of the ELCA? Ministry site characteristics describes your congregation's identity across a spectrum. So as you review each item, imagine the congregation as a whole and mark the best match. And remember that this section will not make or break your profile. Again, it's an opportunity for further conversation during an interview. Purpose, giftedness, and mission invites you to articulate your congregation's sense of identity and reason for being. The gifts you contain, not only your resources and facilities, but also gifts that speak to daily life and professional capacity and sense of community. Your sense of purpose and giftedness contribute to your sense of mission. That is that intersection of your congregation's sense of self and relationship to the community, along with the gifts and resources that are there at your disposal. Mission answers the question, what is it that God has sent your congregation to accomplish in your ministry context? Purpose, giftedness, and mission are an excellent opportunity to encourage conversation throughout the congregation. And more information about how to include the congregation in this discernment is in another video. Part 2 of this ends by inviting you to list references. The first is your synod bishop. The second is someone from inside the congregation or organization, typically an active member or leader. Someone from outside the congregation or organization, could be a local ministry partner, a neighboring pastor, staff at another nonprofit, such as a food bank, a neighbor, or a member who has moved away. An ELCA rostered minister is a pastor or deacon rostered in the ELCA. And so this could be the pastor of a nearby ELCA congregation, an interim or a supply pastor, or even a rostered minister who grew up in the congregation. Finally, include information for anyone else who knows your setting well. This could be somebody who fits one of those other categories or another person that you believe could provide a good and faithful witness to your congregation's mission.
Part 3 of the MSP addresses the leadership needs and provides the opportunity to describe the type of rostered minister you seek. Many of your responses to this section will provide for your congregation's appearance in searches, so be mindful of your selections. Indicate the roster type. Pastors are ministers of word and sacrament, and deacons are ministers of word and service. If you're open to calling a pastor or deacon in their first call, check the appropriate box as well. Select the position type from the drop-down menu and indicate whether the call is full-time, part-time, or could be either. Refer to the video about compensation for resources to determine whether your call is full or part-time. Indicate the level of education required. Normally, a master's degree is required for all rostered ministers. Indicate the primary language and level of fluency. Finally, indicate the level of experience you desire of your rostered minister, and be sure to consult the compensation guidelines for your synod to determine the capacity of your congregation to support different levels of experience. Next, indicate the top 5 ministry tasks required of the rostered minister by your organization. Note that all of these are excellent tasks, but not all of them will reflect the needs of your context in this season of your life together. If your context requires a unique skill to support a unique ministry, be sure to indicate it here. The next section, Gifts for Ministry, addresses the kinds of gifts your rostered minister will bring to your context to complete the ministry tasks listed above. Choose 5 that seem to be a top priority and 5 additional that seem to be very helpful. Note that these are all positive qualities. Your task is to select the qualities that most fit the sense of your congregation's ministry. Mutual expectations is the part of the profile that will be used for at least a year after your rostered minister begins serving in your context. These expectations are used to guide conversation about the first year of ministry that you share together. These expectations should be clear. A good model for preparing clear goals is with the help of the acronym SMART, S-M-A-R-T. Are the goals specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound? If not, spend some time refining these goals so that they can be useful tools for ministry together. For example, the expectation, get young families to come to church, may be specific and relevant, but it's not measurable. How many? Or achievable. We cannot force people to act. Or time-bound, in a week, a year. Instead, you may set the expectation, in the next 12 months, meet with 12 young families who are not members of the church to find out how the church's ministry could support their life of faith. Because this goal is SMART, it is clear and could be a helpful tool for ministry. These mutual expectations provide space for the expectations of what the congregation will do as well. We recommend that your congregational expectations mirror the rostered minister's expectations. If a rostered minister SMART goal addresses young families at the church, a similar SMART expectation should be listed for the congregation as well. These mutual expectations reflect that ministry is shared by the congregation as a whole. Finally, provide information about your congregation's capacity to support the compensation, benefits, and professional expectations of your rostered leader. Your congregation council will be partners in determining your congregation's capacity. Indicate whether your congregation has a parsonage and whether your congregation offers a Social Security tax offset. Most congregations do offer this for ordained clergy. Indicate the maximum amount available for defined compensation, that is, the pastor's salary. We recommend using a dollar amount for the sake of transparency and clarity. Indicate the benefits available, retirement, medical insurance, vacation time, whether there is a sabbatical policy, a parental leave policy, and whether background checks are required. It is a best practice to require background checks for all rostered ministers, staff, and volunteers. Indicate the availability of professional expense accounts, auto and travel reimbursement for visitation and travel to off-site meetings, professional expenses such as print resources and ministry periodicals, reimbursement for continuing education, and resources for first call theological education, especially if you hope to call a rostered minister in their first call. Finally, provide any necessary comments in the open space below. If you have questions about the compensation guidelines for your synod, contact your office of the bishop. And finally, rostered ministers may ask you to provide any of the items below as they discern a call to ministry in your setting. Mission and vision statement, printed history, strategic plan, budget, annual report, position description, and a communications piece. If the item exists, indicate yes. If not, indicate no. Part 4 of the MSP provides space for commentary. This is an opportunity to share things about your ministry that may not have been mentioned elsewhere. You might include a bit of the congregation's history or a description of a recent vision process. Some congregations have shared faith stories from confirmation students. Let whatever you choose provide an opportunity for further conversation in an interview setting. Every ministry site in the mobility database includes a 75-word description featured at the top of its listing. This passage should be engaging and honest, meant to spark the imagination of a candidate to see how they can be a part of the ministry that is already happening in your context. You have the opportunity to provide 7 reflections on ministry and context. This is supplemental material to the ministry site profile and is not required. Contact your office of the bishop for further guidance on the 7 reflections.
Part 5 of the MSP is the completion of the profile. Provide less than 100 words describing the process you've used to gather information, formulate responses, and adopt the profile. It is important to share how the congregation was a part of creating the MSP. Profiles that did not engage the congregation will raise concern on the part of rostered ministers. After describing the process, enter the date the MSP was adopted by the Congregation Council. The call process administrator is the name of the office of the bishop's staff person who manages congregational and pastoral transitions. Enter their information here. Finally, provide the contact information of the person who will complete the reference recommendation mentioned earlier. The next screen gives you the opportunity to create a PDF of your MSP for further review. The final screen is used to submit your MSP. You must hit the green Submit button for your synod office to receive the MSP for review and activation. Thank you for taking on the task of sharing a snapshot of your congregation's ministry with potential rostered ministers. And thank you for all the ministry described in the MSP, as it is a witness to the power of Jesus Christ in our midst.